Welcome to session 8. I'm assuming you've just watched session 7, or you remember still what was on it, and we told you then that we're redoing both 7 and 8 because of some things that we learned in the process of doing 7 and 8 that we needed to correct. And I think that you have that on your mind. Certainly we have it on our mind, because we not only are redoing 7 and 8, we're doing 7 and 8 in pretty much back to back the same way that we did them yesterday. I want to share with you a little bit of intimate information with us, because this is Christmas Day, and we're together, at least most of our classroom, and we decided to try to get together today, and so we're for the most part in one place and working on these sessions at that time, and we'll have our experiment or our consuming together later in the day to be able to spend a little time together. And I'm going to ask the cameraman that has the camera on me to pan across these members of the classroom that are over to the side as I talk for a moment. And because I want you to get just a moment's glance at some of the class that's sitting there. They look pretty sober, don't they? They pan them once more and maybe they'll crack their faces. You need to get up on their faces instead of there. Get where we can see their faces. Try that once again. Okay. The reason that you can come back to me now. The reason that I wanted to do that was to also let you in on the fact that we had a little meeting in the wee hours of the morning discussing our update and the reason that we wanted to redo 7 and 8. And I also asked them, since we are together today, to sit in with us in this recording session, and for them to assist me by asking that nothing come out of this mouth or this vessel or this vehicle that isn't from T's mind, coming through T, and from our Father's mind, T and O's Father's mind, as it flows through T and through this vessel. If they concentrate on that and help me by remembering that, then maybe we'll be less likely to enter into subject matter that is unnecessary or irrelevant or not on the subject. To follow through from session 7, we spoke fairly directly and personally with you as listeners at the end of that session. And in order to pick that up, I'm going to dive right in and be personal with you again, because I realize that you're about to be put in the position of, I guess I realize what a big jolt it is to your system, even though you might have identified it close to the end of that last tape with, as we spoke of the elect and as we spoke of those who are returning in order to complete their overcoming and enter our Father's kingdom. Even though you identified with that, we have to also face the fact that as you think of other things and you do other tasks, that identification begins to fade, and the forces and thoughts of this world have you question, goodness, if I've lost my mind and what is going on, and that's something, I'm not sure I need to watch that next tape, because I could be going down a dangerous road. And part of the aspect of shortening the days at the end, or making whatever classroom might be remaining a short classroom instead of a longer one as we had, is many tests that we were put through, or this classroom was put through over years, you're going to be put through in a very compact, accelerated period of time, and I know that it's going to be hard on your systems and difficult for you to make the adjustment. And I'm going to go right ahead and even bring up another aspect of it that will make it even more difficult for you. But in a sense, it might make it easier for you because we're facing the facts. We're getting right down to reality. If, in fact, we are seeing, because we've talked a little bit about as our Father's kingdom relates to the human kingdom, and as the history books tell us, they relate on a basis of knowing through faith, and because they can't have us motivated by proof, we have to believe in them. If you come this way, if you correspond with us, or you let us know that this is something that you must do, and you want to start identifying with us as wanting to be a child in that kingdom and wanting to rid yourself of your humanness, then you're very quickly going to also realize that you're going to be, in a sense, submissive. You're going to kind of present yourself as putty in our hands because we're representing that kingdom. And I know this is one aspect of it that it is hard to adjust to. In a sense, you have to face right now and continue to face, do I really believe? Do I really believe that this individual that camera is on and these students of that individual, are they really vessels? Are they really of our Father's kingdom? Are they functioning that way? Is the information that is coming through them that information that I can recognize as from my Heavenly Father's kingdom? Can I see the pieces of the puzzle falling together? Is it speaking to me? And if it is speaking to me, then I have to also accept the more difficult realization that this is going to mean that I'm also going to have to get out of a situation where I'm simply watching this tape and do the things that this is going to begin to require as we get more into the specifics with you. And so I have to really look very carefully and examine my own belief. When Jesus said, if you believe me, all those that believe on me and come through me to my Father, He can offer you His kingdom. This is the same thing. I mean, you're being put to the test of, can I recognize this classroom and this individual that's on the camera as from that same household that Jesus represented? From that same household. It doesn't require any more of you than that. It certainly is not going to. I mean, I hope we've gone through that. I'm not pretending to identify as anything other than a member of that household. And I know that I'm of that household, but the question is, do you know that I'm of that household? And if you don't, I don't want to talk you into it. It's a good time for you to put away those tapes or put them in the garbage can if you don't know that. Because now you're being put to the test. Do I recognize this information? If I do recognize this information and the information seems true, then I have to accept the packaging. I have to accept the vessels as being chosen from that kingdom to serve in this function. Now, in reality, that means that I'm actually going to take instruction from the students and from the one that said, I'm Doe, and that instruction is going to get down to specifics and very literal and very mundane, and is going to give me help in ways I never thought that would be necessary in an overcoming process. I mean, the spelling out of the menu that I might consume, or the objects that might be purchased to use to brush my teeth with, and when I bathe, and how often. You know, one of the helpers here brought up that the way we discussed partnerships, or maybe this is on one of the tapes that we've decided not to use, and we'll discuss it again, but they thought that the way I expressed it, you might be confused and think that partnerships go into the bathroom or to the to the cleanup area as a partnership, which of course they don't. But I just remembered that they had mentioned that the way I expressed it, they might have thought that they did, and so we clarified that. But the point is, we're going to get with you down to nitty-gritty. We're going to, if you come this way and you start asking questions, we're going to answer your questions, and you're going to have to realize how mundane those questions actually get. And you're going to say, well, you know, does it mean for me that maybe it would be more right for me to also wear loose-fitting clothing and not do the other things that we had discussed? And yes, you're going to be tested with, can I accept instruction about the particulars from these? That's a very difficult hurdle. Look at how many very, very religious individuals that when Jesus came and said, "It is the Father who speaks through me, and I can take you if you follow me. If you believe what he says through me, if you believe the words that come out of my mouth, and if you're a disciple of mine, I'll get you there." The ones who had the most trouble with it were the ones who were the most religious, because they couldn't accept the packaging. Because the packaging that Lucy had sold, or Lucifer had sold them, was so tinted and so Old English and so wrapped in such spiritual packaging that it was unrealistic, and it was like it had to be fulfilled. It's like wanted the bells to ring and the heavens to move and to be the beginning of a Spielberg film, something that was really showed all the miraculous aspects. It certainly couldn't be like somebody sitting on a tape telling me that they've come from the kingdom of heaven to help me get there, and that in order to get there, I'm going to have to literally and actually face all the little things, the little habits that I have, and change them in order to be a crew member and learn what crew membership really is. And yes, that is where we are. And as we go through more particulars in this session and the next one, you need to, if there is a next one, you need to examine your mindset and your willingness to yield, because our interest is this must be done quickly. Therefore, we know we're being used in the way we're presenting this information. We know we're being used to shorten those days, and that also puts the responsibility on those who might be the beneficiaries of this to move very, very quickly and be put to tests that might have taken us months or years to be put to, that you'll be put to many of those tests in a very, very short time. So we understand the trauma of it, and we'll help you with the trauma if you seek help in the trauma of it. But we have to also warn you and prepare you for some of these particulars. Who's next? And Sawyer, are you next on our question list?
Yes, did you want to talk more about crew consciousness and like breaking the habit of having something when you want it?
Yes, the little saying that we say there that's a big demon that we have to deal with is wanting what I want when I want it. That's it sounds kind of funny and a play on words, but it is a very real demon that most of us have to deal with in overcoming. And we want to try to help you understand what the reward is in overcoming that wanting what I want when I want it. And a parallel that we can use in approaching that issue is the astronaut program and the human space program, or NASA's program. It wouldn't work too well if this Atlantis goes up on a mission and they have a lot of experiments to do, and certain members of their crew, they have to knock out of certain experiments because the experiment required that they consume these items or eat, we use consume for that. If they consume these items and certain members of the crew say, well, I've got a funny stomach and I can't consume those items, so we have to knock out that person then because he not sure that he could handle the freeze-dried or the powdered formula or whatever it is that they're going to be put to. And then another crew member might be, well, I get so sleepy I just can't stay awake when it gets to be 10 p.m. Earth time, so we knock him out of another test that only can be done at a period that might be registering on Earth as, midnight, and so that one's knocked out. So when we're getting rid of what we want to do when we want to do it, it's really the opposite. We're liberating ourselves from structure that is there because of our habit, because of influences that we have listened to that said, I need this, and I'm a morning person, or I'm a night person, or I mainly eat heavier foods in the morning, and I don't eat those kind of foods, or all these ideas we have of we like things our way. We have to have them a certain way. The word here that we have to put in flashing neon light is flexibility. To become a good crew member, we have to have flexibility. So flexible that whatever instruction is given to the crew, we can easily move into. Even if it's sit in a waiting mode, we can move into. We can't say, well, I'm so impatient at times when we have to wait that at least give me some reading material. I can't just sit. And if I have that reading material, the lighting is so poor in here, I'm afraid I might have eye strain. So all these ideas we have of what we need in this circumstance, that makes us inflexible. If we're a good crew member, we are extremely flexible. Most of the work, if not all of the work, that our Father's kingdom does is done in crews and requires extreme flexibility on the part of the crew. It fits right in with what we talked about in our last session, and also working against identity, working against separateness, working against uniqueness, working against anything that is still of the human kingdom. Therefore, if what is of our Heavenly Father's kingdom is manifest to us in terms of in mundane ways as instruction for a crew of what a crew might do, what their schedule might be, what they might consume in any particular given period of time, it's not as humans look at the kingdom of God and think that, well, if this is given to someone consumed, then that must be morally or the godly way to consume. Thinking that it's, here again, it's that old English and that fancy packaging or that spiritual approach to it. They can't think of the kingdom of God as being very practical, very realistic, and just facing issues as tasks come up. Now, if we receive instruction for a crew, then the crew, if it's going to work together, has to be made up of several appendages of the crew as a whole, so that they look to each other. They don't trust their own judgment. They say, what about this? Is this a cup and a half of this? Is this a level tablespoon of that? Is this 3 inches of that? Is this? They don't trust their own judgment because they know they can see things wrong. They can be inaccurate. So part of crew procedure then becomes having a check partner, someone to check with, and that always extends. That partnership then checks with another partnership and so forth, so that whenever it isn't, they don't feel that it can trustworthily be stopped at that moment of checking, then they go to a greater moment of checking or greater extension of checking. So think long and hard about this business of all the ramifications of what I want to do, when I want to do it, and how that limits me, how that restricts me, how that knocks me out of being able to serve with a flexible crew that has an agenda, a task to perform. And in our Father's kingdom, the particulars about that task aren't all given up front. In fact, very little is given up front. They get one phase at a time, and it's when it's completed, then their crew chief says, we're ready for the next phase, if you're ready for us to perform a next phase, and then the next phase comes in. And the phase may be just one little instruction even at a time. And if the crew members start questioning it, well, I don't see why that's necessary, well, then pretty soon we're not really believing that it is crew function that we're developing here. We're interpreting it at a different level. We're trying to look at it from what it means to me. It interferes with me. I'm not sure I like that, or I'm not sure I really believe that that's what we're working on here. And I'm afraid that all of us are put to that test again and again and again. Is that really what these procedures are for? Because I don't know if we've discussed it, but our procedures change, and they change, and they change. Our diet changes, and it changes, and it changes. Our time of scheduling things change, and our partnerships change and change. What we can count on is change, and it comes pretty rapidly. And change gives us new opportunity to be more flexible, that neon word, and so that a crew member can function well as just an appendage, or as we use the illustration of a cog in a wheel or a spoke in a wheel, that if the wheel has a function to perform, then one spoke shouldn't sing louder than another spoke or require certain attention that other spokes don't require, or have in its mind something different. It may not understand what the wheel is even performing, but if its head is in the right place, it doesn't even question what the wheel is performing. It says, I can see here that we're performing a function. I may not understand it, but it's not my place to question it. And I know that I'll be more inclined to be in a position where I can serve if I stop questioning, because then I'm not muddying the air. You know, I don't know if we've discussed it, because I keep getting confused of what we covered in session 7 and 8 that we discarded. But we have to bring up here the issue of telecommunication, because is that the term?
Telepathy?
Telepathy.
Oh,
Telepathy. We say, funny things come out of my mouth. I realized in listening to a session that in one session I had said on hands experiment when I meant to say hands-on experiment. And I think in the sessions that we did yesterday, one came out, well, I don't know what kind of rat pack you are, meaning pack rat. So a lot of things come out backwards, and we have to turn them around and try to adjust them. Mental telepathy is a human definition for a kind of communication that is common in our Father's kingdom. Now, and the reason we have to bring it up and discuss it is because we're not trying to point out, oh, isn't that neat that members of our Father's kingdom can communicate mentally. We're not saying that mental communication is the only communication, but there's a funny little thing that we may not have seen that this piece of the puzzle fits in there, but when Jesus said, if you even look at someone lustfully, you've committed the act, and you say, how could that have anything to do with mental telepathy? It has everything to do with mental telepathy. Because if I have a thought in my mind and I'm in our Father's kingdom, it can It is expressed at the moment that I think it. It is expressed. And even though my older member or the other crew members, they don't like to invade my privacy, they hear my thoughts because they have a communication of not having to use their vocal cords and their tongues. And so since that is their behavior, that is their technique, that is a characteristic of the suit of clothes that they wear, of their physical vehicle that they wear, then we have to learn how to have control of our brain, our tongue, our vocal cords, mainly of our brain, that we don't permit thoughts that would be negative or doubting or periphery or unnecessary, or that could clutter the air, because we're going to move into vehicles where thoughts are, the moment a picture is formed. You remember how in our last session we discussed that when a picture is formed in our heads of the knowledge that, excuse me, that our Father's kingdom has shared with us, that picture is so big and it's so magnificent that it becomes evidence, it becomes proof to us of the existence of our Father's kingdom, and it becomes a picture that we can use to work with daily in our behavior, and that we can refer to refresh our memory so that we don't have to doubt the reality of our Father's kingdom. In that sense, faith then presented that picture, then that became evidence that we could utilize. So all this is interrelated and connected. We're sharing with you several little different ways at looking at the same picture at this moment. So mental telepathy is a very important aspect of crew participation, not letting thoughts enter our mind that can be an interference. Knowing that our older member can read that thought. I mean, if we have that thought, it just comes right to them. So we don't want to be screaming, "Oh, I don't understand what's going on here," in our thoughts. Why don't you explain to me what I'm doing here? You told me to do so-and-so, but you didn't tell me why. And so then pretty soon we become as a child or an interference that really is not ready for that crew activity. We have to be put in more of a remedial situation because of our needless questioning and lack of trust and needing of attention, needing of explanation. It's something that we need to consider. Where do we go from there?
Well, I was wondering, back in session 6, I think we left off, we were talking about some of the particulars, the techniques of overcoming sensuality, and I thought we wanted to go back to clothing, because a costume that we wear, and some of the aspects of that.
Thank you for reminding me of that, and if I remember right, we felt that we didn't, when we were discussing costume or clothing that we use in the classroom to try to abide by the principles of how members of our Father's kingdom would present themselves if they had to wear the kind of vehicles that we are still wearing. We we left off, if I'm not mistaken, some little things that may not be that significant, but we feel like to mention them. Like we mentioned double pockets, that when we can buy shirts that have double pockets that we would prefer to, though we don't have a rule that says we can only wear shirts with double pockets. You say, why double pockets? Well, because it kind of helps take the emphasis off of shape, particularly like a female vehicle. If they have double pockets, it makes the vehicle less obvious that it's a female vehicle. And if we're getting into a non-gender mind place and behavior place where we don't want to identify at a gender level, then double pockets is one little thing that helps us with that. Another aspect of that same item is like where the length of our sleeves or our trousers might be. We've said they're loose fitting and we don't draw them together at the waist. We don't like for shape to be accentuated or exposed. So we're more comfortable if our arm is, for the most part, not exposed. So we'll wear our sleeve length either at the cuff or at the wrist, or turned back a time or two. That is easy then use of the sleeves, but doesn't expose that much of the arms. And we would certainly be uncomfortable in shorts or what a human would call a bathing suit. We're extremely uncomfortable when you've wiped things out of your memory and you're moving into a new behavior. I just can't remember seeing a beach full of bathers in our Father's kingdom. It's beyond my imagination that would be behavior in our Father's kingdom, to need to have a bathing suit or to expose the vehicle in that way. Another thing we'd mentioned in that same respect was the sheerness of a fabric, because if it's a sheer fabric, then it also has a degree of exposure. So we make a point not to get things that are too sheer. We even though we wear undershirts, or we have underclothes on, both under our shirt and under our trousers, and none of the females wear skirts. Not that they're trying to look like males. It's just that loose-fitting trousers, even though they might have come from the female part of the department store, loose-fitting trousers and loose-fitting shirts give us more of a genderless freedom, when we don't have to think about them. And they don't make us feel masculine or feminine, because, believe it or not, don't forget, males like to wear tight clothing and tight shirts and tight blue jeans and show off their curves as well in kind of a ridiculous way. So we are doing everything that we can do to not identify with gender. A sheer, and I think there was even one other, the open collar is one other aspect that we pay attention to. It's a trend in some human circles to open 2 or 3 buttons or halfway to the waist, and we're very uncomfortable with that kind of exposure. It causes that particular individual to kind of advertise their gender, and the last thing we want to do is even be reminded of a gender. So we would keep our collars buttoned at the top, or if it's too tight at the top and there's a second button near the top, then we'll use the second button. If that's not comfortable to us, we'll go to another shirt. But these are all little finishing of details in talking about costume, which we had covered in a previous session. What's next on our list, Sawyer?
Well, what about avoiding places that would tempt the vehicle, like bars and clubs?
I know that it's important for us to mention this, but these things are just so distant in our history to even think about. But in yours, they're not that distant, because you might go to places where you would subject yourself to vibrations where people certainly wouldn't be that accepting of your discussion of what you're about to do, or ready to. How could you be consistent with your new mindset if you're in a bar or someplace where the vibrations are that of intoxication, or thinking the kind of conversation that goes on in a bar, whether it be of the NFL game or the so-and-so's pregnant, or so-and-so's about to get married, or did you know this, gossip and all the kind of conversation that is common in a bar-like circumstance. The vibrations are so beneath us that we would avoid them like the plague. And it can't stand, I can't count the times that we've gone into a place, even a restaurant or a movie, that we, by looking at the advertisement, we thought it would be okay, and we have to turn around and leave because we can't stand the general feeling that is there. It's almost the unseen presence that is there that seems to run us out. And we have to be willing to get into a frame of mind where we don't mind walking out, or maybe going back up to the ticket office and saying, I sat in there for 5 minutes and that movie's not to my liking. I mean, if I can get my money back, I would. Otherwise, that's fine. I'll leave. But I can't count the times that we have done that at movie theaters or at restaurants or other places that we might go. Even, I'm afraid we've even visited churches where the same thing has happened, where the thing that people would talk about would sicken our stomach because it would be so unbecoming to the instruction that we have received in our changeover from human kingdom to our Father's kingdom. So the answer is yes, we avoid places that could pull us back into the world, and we try to confine our places to things that are uplifting, at least objective, and not threatening to us. We don't try to subject ourselves to tests unnecessarily by saying, well, I've outgrown that, I can handle that. We don't ever trust that. We make a point not to trust it. What's next on our list? June?
What about the structure of partnerships? How is that determined?
Well, that's a very, very useful tool in the classroom, and it's a very important topic to us. Partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. They are valuable, valuable, valuable. We told you a little bit ago how they can change frequently. We've learned from experience that it helps to have a partnership, since a partnership is two individuals or sometimes three individuals who have asked their other partners in that partnership to help them in their overcoming. They ask that part of a partnership is to involve the other person in assisting you in your task of overcoming. Now, if it can't be done in sincerity, then it's a pretty lousy partnership. If I'm hesitant to ask someone, or even if I'm hesitant to have anything brought to my attention that I need to overcome, I don't know what I'm in this classroom for. So if I'm trying to overcome the world, then I want all the help I can get. And certainly a partnership is a place where I can get help in my overcoming. So it's true that in a partnership, the members of that partnership, be it twos or threes, it's interesting as you think in terms of the New Testament how Jesus sent his disciples out in twos or threes because he knew it worked as a neat partnership. So they do solicit from their partners, if you see me do things, or even my countenance, or a little habit that I might have, a little idiosyncrasy that I might have, or if I treat you in any way, or I begin to gossip, or anything that you observe about me that is not the way that we have been taught and that is unbecoming to members of our Father's kingdom, I ask that you bring it to my attention. And then, but what if we were in a situation where one partner is pretty sensitive emotionally and they have a hard time dealing with it if the other partner brings it up in a way that hurts their feelings? So even though the one partner is trying to learn not to respond that way and not be so easily hurt, they have to get past that. On the other side of the fence, the person who is not very diplomatic in bringing up something that needs to be overcome has to work very hard at learning to be diplomatic, and also has to question their judgment department. Am I seeing a lot of things critically that maybe surpass our teaching and our instruction, and maybe it's me, maybe it's still my humanness that is finding fault here by some judgment at the human level, and instead of the way I've been taught by my teachers or my older members. So you can see all the ways that can work. One aspect of a partnership that is so valuable is to not have a partnership made up of two individuals that could easily fall back into being attracted to each other at the human level, or in an emotional involvement, or in a sensual involvement. I mean, you see June and Sawyer here, and male, I'm sorry I said that, because they are not, but to appearances their vehicles are. And Sawyer still sees with his eyes, even though he's trying to train his eyes. If he lowered his vibrations, his eyes could see remnant of female vehicle, and vice versa. June could see remnant of male vehicle. And so it's an important factor to, certainly for the most part, to not place vehicles in a partnership where because they are not partnered, even though they have been given tasks where they are partnered for a period of time. They are partnered in the aspect of serving as teleprompter and helping me in this task. But when this task ceases, or the session is over, or they're not studying for the session, then they go back to their other partnership, which might have become, their various partners might be partnering for that period of time. But I'm just trying to help you understand that we don't put people in partnership situations that would test their overcoming, or put that to the test unnecessarily. So if I'm still dealing with, even if I don't think I'm dealing with, but my teacher might realize that I'm still dealing with, then we wouldn't be partnered in a relationship where it's male-female. And we take all things into consideration as to how the vehicle might have had its orientation, whether it was heterosexual or homosexual, because in our Father's kingdom, those words don't mean any different than orange or apple. I mean, they have no more significance than that. They're two pieces of fruit, orange and apple. And as far as our Father's kingdom is concerned, that's two aspects of sensuality, reproductive activity, side issues of the human kingdom that is completely inappropriate, not therefore bad and ugly, but it's not done. It's not needed. It's not a behavior that is there. Remember, babies are not born in that kingdom from a female's womb. And remember, babies are born from the human kingdom as adult humans, and they become babes in that kingdom. That's the way that works. So everything we can do to make a partnership work, we don't like to put them to the test. If let's say sometimes partners might be so much of the same mind and the same faults and not be able to recognize those faults, that it doesn't work. If one person is given to lack of restraint and being too boisterous, and they're partnered with someone else that has lack of restraint and they're too boisterous and they're careless and they upset things, not meaning to, and they can't really help each other that well because they don't see those things. So it helps to kind of calculate, and we get instruction to calculate a partnership in areas that they can be helpful to each other. And never can one partner cover all the needs of another partner. That's part of the reason why partnerships are frequently changed in order to have us, what are we trying to become? Flexible in neon signs, so that we can serve as a crew member without having to require special attention or having to deal with things. What's next on our list? Sawyer?
Well, can you talk about how death and disease, this is, I guess, off the subject of sensuality, but death and disease can bring you closer?
I think that we should address that, and because it can help us understand. Well, let's take what we have talked about, how in our Father's kingdom, death is not when the vehicle falls away. That when the vehicle falls away, it has little or no effect on the soul. And death only applies to the soul. So when a vehicle drops, it's not affecting the soul, then death does. But humans use term when the vehicle falls. Now there is a little bit of something that happens when we lose the vehicle that can help us, because frequently when a person is traumatized because they're about to lose their vehicle, that they turn closer to God, or they try to clean up their act a little bit and examine whether or not they are maybe going to their Creator, or that maybe this world is over for them, and so they're wondering about, well, let's face it, there's not much time they can make much significant change in their behavior or their likes and dislikes or becoming a crew member, but they can start trying to get a little closer in their consciousness to their God. They can start to examine their values, and therefore if that soul then leaves that vehicle, while examining that, then that means that that soul, as it enters another leaf of the human perennial plant, that it has a clean start, it has a fresher start with a goodness consciousness, looking to try to be something good. Or it may not have left that previous plant with that consciousness, and it would not enter with it. But death can be taken advantage of in the same way a so-called terminal disease puts us in the same thinking. We begin to question how we're going to spend our time from here till the end of our life, even though it isn't the end of our life. It's just when that particular plant, which is very, very temporal, when you think about perennials. But it can be used to get us closer, so that even AIDS or any contagious disease, any disease that is big on the list, or that humans might put in the category of plague, and can be thought of as a definite positive. Not a positive in the way that it's getting rid of the oranges. You know, why are the oranges so bad? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's a positive in that any disease can make us re-examine our values and make us question, why am I in this position? Am I put in this position? Where's the positive in this? If the positive is to make me think, should I be getting closer to my Heavenly Father? Should I become, in some people's eyes, more religious, which might be a turning point? In some instances, becoming more religious is not a turning point in the right direction. It can be a turning point in the wrong direction, because the religion they might be turning to is so filled with misinformation. And where does Lucifer like to put the strongest misinformation? In the religions that should house the realistic heritage information of our Father's kingdom relationship with this age in this 6,000 year period. So back to the question, death, disease, even though we know it is not death, those two traumatic situations can serve in a very good way to help a soul re-examine their condition. Why am I in this position? Make a positive of that. It's one problem with the concept of understanding reincarnation is that Lucy dives into that one too and colors it. He has you thinking that, you know, I've got to watch because I may come back as a bird or a monkey, or like the Hindus thinking like such a caste system that I can't get out of this caste system until I have so many incarnations in that, and then I'll work into another caste system, and I'll work into another caste system. I mean, our Heavenly Father's kingdom, in a sense, doesn't even really want us to understand reincarnation, because then we want to involve ourselves in past lives and get life readings and know where we were in the life before and the one before that. All that can do is against us. That can re-trigger things that were designed to be disconnected when we left that condition, when we left that plant and entered another one. Even though it's true that at the time we leave a plant, we're going to come right back into the same plant. If we were still tied to that plant, we're going to come right back, work our way right back into the same addictions if we still had those addictions. But that's about as far as it goes. But who is to say how many cycles are there? It's irrelevant. The issue that is at hand is, can this one be my last one? That is synonymous with overcoming. that is synonymous with graduating from the human condition to our Heavenly Father's kingdom, this can be your last one. So numbers don't count. It doesn't really mount to a hill of beans even how much I have to overcome. I mean, I can't say, well, if I haven't overcome so-and-so, then I must have so many incarnations still ahead of me, and I'll work my way up to that. You don't know. I mean, we don't know if our Father's kingdom is going to present us with another hothouse and another age to come that's going to last another 6,000 years. And we don't even know that if our attitude is that it's coming and I'm going to put it off, He will find, we'll scratch that one off because He's not coming to me when I gave Him a chance. So we have to consider these things. Okay, what's our next question? June.
What about attachments beyond the immediate family?
Attachments like a best friend? Or,
Yes,
Well, it doesn't hurt us to examine that a little bit, because sometimes those attachments were as strong, if not stronger, than attachments of the physical family or the human family tree. Anytime there's an attachment, we were just talking about reincarnation. The funny thing is, if we have a very close friend, someone we're bound to, we were probably bound to that same soul in another vehicle outside of that family unit in the time that we were there before. But that's, we just said that's insignificant, has no particular bearing. What does have bearing is I need to sever that one if I'm going to make this my last one, if I'm going to get out of the human kingdom. And it becomes hard to sever sometimes relationships where you have been intimate with someone and they've been the person you always run to cry on their shoulder or to tell them of what you've experienced, or you just had a miscarriage, or you know, whatever it is that's traumatic that you go and share with someone as your confidant. And it's easy to bring even into a classroom that habit of needing a confidant or needing someone to have a close relationship with, even though you may not be looking for a physical or sensuous relationship. But in a sense, our Father's kingdom says, I'm it. If you're going to get into my kingdom, I have to be it. I have to be satisfactory to you. What I offer you has to be satisfactory. It has to be all you want. It has to offer you enough. And that becomes a difficult task. Because when you're trying to overcome the desires that you previously had, it's easy to find the vessel that is given to you for the kingdom of heaven to speak to you through. It's hard to find that vessel adequate supply to all of your needs until those needs are fairly well overcome and you have shifted to a new set of needs. But that teacher, that vessel, can help you shift, can help you make the adjustment so that you can go through the weaning from those old needs and adopting new needs and looking to the kingdom of heaven through that vessel. It has to be done that way. I'm afraid Jesus warned us all of that it has to be done that way. Someone has to be assigned that position, and we have to accept the one that was assigned to that position, and that individual has to be satisfying to us, adequate to fill the bill of our needs. And that really puts the pressure on that vessel, because that vessel knows that his older member or his father more than fills the bill. So the big question, or the big problem that we have to deal with, is examining the bill that needs to be filled. Does the bill need to be changed? How much of the old bill is human? If it is, I have to strike it out. And then maybe if I strike it out, there's not much left. So I haven't really learned what it is that's supposed to be on that bill of what my needs are. Because we don't want to stop asking. We want to know what our needs are so that our asking not decreases but increases. Our asking as far as human things decrease until they are non-existent, and our asking of things of our Father's kingdom increases and increases. We said that pump had to be put into mechanism in our free will and our choice so that our thirst increases. And it only comes as we ask questions and as we pursue and we desire to become strong and flexible. A good crew member that wants to be available for service, and where the other crew members can say, boy, I'd really like to work on a crew with that crew member, not because that crew member's more attractive or more fun or more this, but is functioning. Someone who knows procedure, likes procedure, and can function in a way that we really feel like a mechanism that is working. And then talk about satisfying. That becomes very, very satisfying. What's next on our list, Sawyer?
Well, I wondered if we might want to go on to the question about getting your house in order, like regarding your possessions.
Oh, I don't think we can go to that one too soon because that's a big one. Mention those things: getting house in order,
Possessions,
indebtedness,
or credit card use.
credit cards. Boy, getting house in order, possessions, indebtedness, credit card usage. Okay, we'll start. I don't think we're going to get very far, but we'll start. If you stop and think about it, the way the world out there is designed, it makes fools of us because we involve ourselves in activity that we have no right to involve ourselves in. Now, how does it do that? Because we involve ourselves in activity on the basis of what we have borrowed. We buy now, pay later. We don't really buy now. We just sign a paper agreeing to buy. We haven't bought until it's paid for. And according to our Heavenly Father's kingdom, we shouldn't be participating in things that are not available to us. If we needed them, they would be available to us without signing a note to someone or without having to possess something before we could afford it. And yet the whole world out there revolves against working with objects and things that we have not yet paid for. And that is backwards. It also is obviously not of our Father's kingdom because it binds you more to the human kingdom. It puts you in a circumstance where if you left it to do what we're talking about, you'd leave a mess. And we can't do that. You can't leave a mess. So we have to get our houses. The first thing on his list was get our houses in order. And getting our houses in order means we've got to examine the whole status of, is there any validity to even possessing a credit card? Are we not then using gasoline with our gasoline credit card, gasoline that isn't ours, that we're going to pay for later? We can't do that. So, well, as we sit here, there goes that 10-second marker, and that means that this session is coming to an end, and we have to pick this one up in our next session.